Our story begins in the early 1800s before Niagara Falls was officially a city. The area was made up of two townships, then called Manchester and Bridge. Judge Augustus Porter and his brother General Peter Porter had bought Goat Island from the state of New York. The brothers had built a 300-foot-long wooden walkway from the mainland of Goat Island to Terrapin Point out of wooden planking. In 1829, General Parkhurst Whitney, a local hotelier, erected the Terrapin Tower. It was the first of many towers built at Niagara Falls. The tower rose 40 feet above the brink. The tower was removed in 1872 by dynamite by its builders. In the 1860s through the 1890s, several bridges were built to span the Niagara River to connect the United States and Canada. Prior to 1897, the first two suspension bridges were destroyed by natural causes. In 1897, the Upper Steel Arch Bridge was opened in the place of a suspension bridge. It was called the Fallsview Bridge or the Honeymoon Bridge. The Porters had also erected a wooden bridge from the mainland to the south end of Goat Island. The bridge to Goat Island was a toll bridge, costing 25 cents to gain access to the island. The village of Manchester would become a center for manufacturing and mills during the early years of the Industrial and Power Revolution. By the 1830s, Manchester had a population of just over 500 citizens, and by the 1850s had grown to almost 3,000. By the 1870s, large mills and factories had been built upon the edge of the gorge and riverbanks upstream from the falls. This had changed the appearance of a once glorious nature park to that of industrial property. In 1827, Nicholas Biddle, a Philadelphia banker, financed the building of a staircase to the base of the falls. This came to be known as the Biddle Stairway. The stairs allowed all visitors easy access to the river base and a close-up view of both the American and Canadian falls. They built walkways that led to the base of both falls. The area below the American Bridal Veil Falls was known as the Cave of the Winds. The staircase remained in operation until 1927. It was closed due to a tragic rockfall and future safety concerns. In the 1880s, two significant events occurred to this area. In 1887, the villages of Manchester and Bridge consolidated and became the city of Niagara Falls. In 1885, the state of New York purchased Goat Island and the park surrounds back from their owners. They then created the New York State Niagara Reservation Park. thus returning the park back to the visitors. No story of Niagara Falls would be complete without the inventions of either Thomas Edison or Nikola Tesla. Thomas Edison was the inventor of DC, direct current. Nikola Tesla was the inventor of AC, alternating current. Water could be used to drive turbines that could generate electricity. Several companies then began to harness the Niagara River for power generation. In 1895, there were two main power generation stations in operation. One of those was located 1.5 miles upstream from the falls and aptly named the Niagara Falls Power Company, operated at the Edward Dean Adams Power Plant. In 1883, George Westinghouse and his company created an illumination system using Nikola Tesla's AC power. The Niagara Falls Power Company, using their transformers, could create 1,250 horsepower and over 11,000 volts of electricity. AC power could be transmitted long distances over wire, providing electricity to Buffalo and beyond. This electricity was then transmitted via wires over distances, creating the first power grids. This spurred the creation of new businesses and provided a needed boost to Niagara Falls. The other power plant was a Sholkoff power plant, located approximately 1 mile downstream from the falls. In the 1880s, plans were made to build a railway system near the base of the Niagara Gorge near the river, traveling north. Passing by the lower rapids in the Whirlpool and extending to Lewiston, New York, this train could allow connections to other railways across New York and to assist tourists from the United States and north from Canada to gain access to Niagara Falls. Due to the area available for building, the plans called for a narrow-gauge rail line. The initial tracks were constructed in less than 3 months, from April to June of 1895. The Great Gorge Route Railroad opened August of 1895. In 1901, then President of the United States William McKinley rode the train. This electric train and its popularity equaled that of Niagara Falls itself for providing a truly unique view. Rider demand required a second rail be built and was completed a year later. Workers were paid the sum of $2.50 a week to build the Great Gorge Route Railroad. The Gorge train ran every 15 minutes daily from spring to fall. Tragedies often occurred on the route due to its location and the unstable geology in the area, such as erosion, rock falls, and landslides. 1907 saw the deaths of a conductor and 8 passengers. 1910 saw a 2-car collision. In 1917, a trolley derailed, slid down the embankment, and came to rest in the Niagara River due to rail damage from heavy rains. 12 riders were killed. In 1935, a massive rockfall destroyed a large portion of the track and the track bed. During the same period, buses and automobiles began to prove the trolley was now unprofitable. All of these factors combined to see the Great Gorge route cease operations. Ice formations in the Niagara Gorge and on the Niagara River occur almost every single winter. They are formed by the snow and the ice that travels downstream and over the falls. These events jam up in the lower river and freeze into a giant mass commonly called the ice bridge. At its fully formed peak, the ice bridge would span from shoreline to shoreline and appear safe to traverse. So on many occasions, people were able to walk across the river from the United States to Canada. Twice in recorded memory, the brink of the American Falls had also frozen, allowing people to cross from the mainland to Goat Island. Vendors erected booths and sold commodities right on the ice bridges. Winter after winter, many people would come and visit and gain access to the ice bridge. Normally this activity was considered safe until February of 1912. The safety and stability of the ice bridges are affected by weather conditions, and upon the warming of spring, caused the ice bridge to break free, collapse, and drift downstream. Without warning and with approximately 30 people on the ice bridge began to break apart, collapse, and separate into small pieces. This had left people stranded on the pieces which were headed downstream towards the whirlpool and the rapids. The attempts made to rescue the stranded people failed, and 3 people died. With this tragedy, officials declared all ice bridge activity would no longer be allowed, thus all access would be prohibited on and around the ice bridge. In 1901, the toll bridge to Goat Island was replaced with a sturdy stone bridge. The Cataract House shown here and other local hotels were enjoying tourism trade all the more. With the city growing in population, tourism reaching new heights, Niagara Falls was truly prospering. Safety railings and viewing platforms were erected at Prospect Point. A pavilion was erected on Goat Island for tourists and visitors to gather around. Bridges were built to allow access to Luna Island and the Bridal Veil Falls. Bridges were built to allow access to the Three Sisters Islands, appropriately named after Parkhurst Whitney's three daughters, Asenath, Angeline, and Celinda Eliza. The times were good indeed for Niagara Falls and still growing. By the 1920s, Niagara Falls had a population of 35,000 people. Rail service for use around the city and between Niagara Falls and Buffalo had been built. More hotels were built and opened for tourists. Stores and shops were open and catered to almost every conceivable demand. Theaters and restaurants prospered, as did the city, which now also benefited from the lighting of streets and businesses at night. The Cave of the Winds continued as a major international attraction for tourists. Each and every year, due to damage caused by nature, the walkways must be torn down and rebuilt. As noted before about the formation of ice bridges, one of the negatives to their beauty is damages they can cause. Ice bridges shift and move, which can and did destroy much of whatever they were near. In 1939, their greatest damages were seen to occur. The structure known as the Honeymoon Bridge had its supporting beams attached to the bottom of the gorge near the river. These beams were encased by the rising ice bridge. When the ice shifted, severe damage occurred, which caused the bridge eventually to collapse. The beginning of the 1940s saw a new bridge completed to replace the previous structure. This bridge was named the Rainbow Bridge. The new bridge was wisely built from the sides of the gorge, away from any possible damages caused by the ice. Once again, passage was possible between the United States and Canada. The 1950s once again saw more incredible growth. The population of Niagara Falls now approached 80,000. The city had inherited an unofficial title, now called by many the honeymoon capital of the world. The Cave of the Winds, the Maid of the Mist boat trip, Terrapin Point were all major attractions. Tourists came in record numbers, and as these home movies taken in the 1940s and 1950s will attest, they were as beautiful then as they are now. In the early 1950s, cracks were noticed in the ground and pavement near Prospect Point. The area was breaking free from the surrounds and heading for collapse. In 1954, the largest single natural rockfall ever recorded at Niagara Falls occurred. 185,000 tons of rock fell into the gorge. We now present two different home movies of the Prospect Point collapse in progress. In 1957, a few remaining pieces of the ground near Prospect Point that had not fallen into the gorge had to be removed. To preserve the safety of the area for tourists, they were sent into the gorge by dynamite. In 1956, the Sholkoff power plant experienced its own collapse into the gorge. Once again, we are treated to more home movies from the 1940s and the 1950s of Terrapin Point, Cave of the Winds, and The Maid of the Mist. This old footage, while sometimes not remaining pristine, shows the areas our parents, our grandparents, or our great-grandparents may have seen them. A lot of the home movie footage we have offered features Terrapin Point in a way long since forgotten. Throughout the 1800s and the 1900s, you were allowed to access the land near the brink of the Horseshoe Falls almost unrestricted. This, just as many other vantage points, were changed in the name of safety. In 1969, cracks in the grounds near Terrapin Point were discovered. In 1972, Terrapin Point was closed off to tourists, and seismic sensors were installed to measure potential movements that may cause a collapse. In 1983, with Terrapin Point still closed to the tourists, the United States Army Corps of Engineers prepared the area and blasted off 25,000 tons of rock. Shortly thereafter, the area was backfilled in, walkways and railings were installed, and it was reopened to the tourists. The collapse of 1954 and later blasting in 1957 had caused irreparable damage to the previous system used to take tourists to the bottom of the falls. In the early 1960s, a new tower was erected, facilitating access to the river base. This was simply named the Observation Tower. It replaced the tunnels and stairs used previously to get to the base of the falls and for riding the Maid of the Mist with high-speed elevators. Concerns were raised in the mid-1960s regarding the accumulation of rocks at the base of the American Falls. 3 major rock falls had occurred over time at the falls, leaving nearly 130,000 cubic yards of rock at the base. In 1965, Congress authorized the United States Army Corps of Engineers to study methods to preserve the safety and beauty of the American Falls. An international joint commission was developed by United States and Canadian governments. It was decided to dewater the American Falls to facilitate studies. In 1969, visitors to the falls were able to witness an event never seen before, never seen since. On June 12, 1969, the American Falls were in effect stopped. The United States Army Corps of Engineers erected a cofferdam across the river at the south end of Goat Island. During the next 5 months, detailed geologic tests were performed. 46 core holes were drilled. Testing was performed to identify weak points in the rock mass near and at the face of the brink. Additional tests were performed to measure water pressure on rock joints and for horizontal movements in the rock mass. Minimal water flow was maintained to not allow the rock to become completely dry. Studies were conducted on the talus, the rock at the bottom of the falls, which measured their size, their type, and their condition. The Commission considered 3 methods for removing the talus. After much debate of the costs, benefits, and most importantly the public opinion of Niagara Falls beauty, the Commission recommended that the area be left completely intact. Considering the cost of the removal of talus and the fact that removing it may eventually cause accelerated erosion at the base, the Commission agreed to leave the falls as it was. In addition, it was also decided that artificial means should not be employed to prevent erosion at the American Falls. On November 25, 1969, the cofferdam was removed and water once again flowed over the American Falls. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, urban renewal set in. Much of the city was removed, torn down, and changed. But in a greater historic perspective, Niagara Falls did not change. It's as beautiful now as it was then. We now present a then and now perspective of Niagara Falls. This is the bridge to Luna Island. This is the Terrapin Point walkway, which was removed and the area is now filled in. This is the first Goat Island Bridge. This is the second stone bridge. This is the now crumbling 103-year-old stone bridge, which is prepared for repair or replacement. This was the Biddle Stairway area. This was the original Cave of the Winds entrance. This was the city of Niagara Falls. This was the main business district, Fall Street, looking east. This is Fall Street looking west. This is Fall Street looking east again. This was the Edward Dean Adams Power Plant. The stone arch on the face of the Edward Dean Adams plant was moved to Goat Island in 1966 and dedicated by then New York State Governor Nelson Rockefeller. This was the Cave of the Winds. These are the two largest buildings remaining, the United Office Building and the Hotel Niagara. This is the old Great Gorge route area. These are the bridges to Three Sisters Islands. This is the Goat Island Pavilion. This is the observation tower, which was given a facelift in 2003. These are ice bridges. They still form. They always will form. And 5 to 10 million people still visit Niagara Falls each year in awe of its beauty.